Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, may I go ahead and present the report?
Well, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. This is the report of the special session held between the Joint Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions, Finance, National Planning, Agriculture, and Appropriation that was held with the federal government's economic management team on the 9th of February 2024. The report that I have here are in 4 sections. We have the executive summary. On the executive summary, I will make a very quick background report. The Nigerian economy is currently facing challenging times, largely caused by distortions resulting from major fiscal and monetary policy actions of previous governments, notably the huge direct lending to the federal government by the central bank to the tune of about 30 trillion, the operation of an opaque fuel subsidy regime, and a raft of interventions by the central bank which seemed not well targeted. The result has been rising inflation, especially food, and persistent Naira depreciation. Expectedly, the ongoing efforts by the current administration to correct the anomalies of the past have come with some painful economic conditions which need to be ameliorated. In reaction to the current economic hardship Nigerians are going through, the Joint Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions, Finance, National Planning, Agriculture, and Appropriation held an interactive session with the key members of the federal government's economic management team. The aim was to ascertain the true state of affairs of the country's economy, the nature of the challenges and measures being put in place to address within the shortest possible time. What emerged from the interaction is the urgent need to bring down inflation, boost food production, and stabilize the economy through proper coordination of fiscal and monetary policies. On page 2, you have the introduction and list of attendees. About 35 senators attended the session, and from the economic team of the federal government, on page 3, we have the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. We also had the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Abubakar Kyari, the Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, the Governor of Central Bank, Mr. Olayemi Kadoso, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank Economic Policy, Mr. Mohamed Soni Abdullahi. So page 4 gives a background to all of the conversations that ensued, and then the summary of the activities from the session. You will have it on page 5. And if I may summarize, the questions that were posed by the Joint Committee of the Senate, they are on page 6, and they centered around inflation and exchange rate related questions. To be specific, the key 5 points there, you have what specific measures have been put in place by the monetary authority to ensure price stability. 2, what has the economic management team done to improve FDI inflows in the country? 3, what efforts has the CBN made to strengthen the Naira over the medium to the long term? 4, what are the consequences that the CBN have put in place for individuals with invalid FX claims? 5, what sustainable solution is the CBN seeking to neutralize the adverse effect of the 30 trillion outstanding ways and means that we have in the books of the CBN? On agriculture and food security, the related questions are as follows. 1, what is the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security doing to ensure stability of food products in the country? 2, how is the ministry protecting farmers across the country to ensure they have improved productivity. 3, what efforts are being made by the Ministry of Agriculture to support players in the agricultural value chain to drive growth in the sector? Now, direct questions to the CBN are as follows. 1, how does the CBN plan to support productive sectors of the economy? So on page 7, it continues on page 7. 2, what is the CBN doing to ensure collaboration with the federal government to tackle the economic issues in the country? 3, is the CBN looking to conduct forensic audit of FX allocations and transactions for past transactions between 2016 to 2022? Then, of course, we had general economic questions as well. 1, what actions are being taken by the monetary and fiscal authorities to ensure coordination of policy and activities? 2, the National Assembly approved about 500 billion naira for subsidy removal as palliatives. However, palliatives have not been distributed by the government. What is the economic management team doing about this? 3, what is the Minister of Finance doing to ensure coordination of economic programs embarked on by other ministries? The response from the economic management team, we have it on page 7, note 3, 2.1. It started with the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. In his presentation, the Minister of the Economy provided the following information on the plans and activities of the government to resolve the economic challenges facing the country. 1, he said in the short term, the administration is focused on inflation reduction and stability of foreign exchange rate. 2, measures are being taken by the government to boost oil and non-oil revenue. 3, the government is adopting technology to drive timely revenue collection. 4, the government is seeking ways to cut down on expenditures to reduce fiscal burden. 5, the government is ensuring that pain felt by the vulnerable and the poor in the short term is reduced to the barest minimum. So you have on page 8 the response of the Minister of Agriculture and as well as the response of the CBN governor. So I'll just go into the recommendations. So on page 10, you have the recommendations. In the light of the exhaustive deliberations and thorough examination of pertinent issues and presentations, the Senate Joint Committee on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions, Finance, National Planning, Agriculture, and Appropriation presents the following recommendations. These recommendations are grounded in a comprehensive understanding of the issues at hand with due consideration given to the presentations, data analysis, and of course the goals of addressing the legacy challenges posed by insecurity, climate change, inadequate power supply, transport infrastructure, which all contribute to rising inflation in the country. And they are as follows. On page 11, 4.1, 1, address inflationary pressure through liquidity reduction. The government should prioritize liquidating the 30 trillion ways and means obligation of the federal government through a quicker resolution mechanism than the current securitization arrangement for over a period of 40 years. In addition, the CBN should put in place measures to ensure the repayment of various intervention programs by the beneficiaries after a thorough evaluation of their performance. This will help reduce money supply. Also, the quasi-fiscal measures totaling about 10 trillion, of which the anchor borrower program is a major part, should be further interrogated by the committee with a view to plugging loopholes in future development finance activities of the bank. B, on foreign exchange management, the committee commends the bank, that is the central bank, for some of the measures put in place to address exchange rate volatility and improve liquidity in the FX market. These include clearing outstanding valid obligations, introducing new operational mechanisms for BDCs and IMTOs, and enforcing the net open position limit. However, in order to ensure transparency and boost confidence in the market, there is need for the committee to further investigate the 2.4 billion forex transaction adjudged invalid out of the outstanding 7 billion obligations, with a view to identifying culprits and meting out appropriate sanctions to serve as deterrent. Furthermore, on page 12, the committee needs to interrogate the sudden revision of the rate calculation methodology by the FMDQ on Monday, January 29, 2024, and the resultant sharp increase in the NAFEM rate, that's the foreign exchange market rate, from 891 Naira to the dollar to 1,348.63, which significantly impacted the value of dollar-denominated obligations. This step is necessary in order to safeguard investment, protect jobs and economic agents in Nigeria with foreign currency exposure. C, fiscal discipline and expenditure reduction. Improve fiscal discipline by reducing government expenditure to lower fiscal deficits and promote fiscal sustainability. In this connection, exchange gains from Naira depreciation should be used to wind down existing government deficits at all levels rather than continue to expand the size of the budget. D, rapid social safety net interventions. Provide interventions in the area of food and transportation to alleviate the suffering of vulnerable Nigerians and mitigate the impact of the economic challenges. E, compliance and transparency of economic actions. The CBN should ensure compliance with the provisions of the Act in respect of ways and means and accountability through timely submission of its budget, financial statements, and reports of its activities to the President and the National Assembly as stipulated in the Act. F, enhance fiscal monetary collaboration. Provide a legal framework for effective collaboration of fiscal and monetary policies. In the area of agriculture and food security, the following recommendations were also adopted. 1, encourage local industries by identifying strategic commodities to be based on regional and state comparative advantage. On page 13, you also have, it continues on page 13, so you have addressed issues of land tenure systems in Nigeria by encouraging state governments to create land banks for agricultural investment. 3, give incentives to manufacturers of farming equipment to manufacture or assemble them locally. 4, promote commodities exchange by making available to them on hire or lease basis or through the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. 5, deploy private partnership to invest in cold rooms to reduce post-harvest losses. 6, increase significantly the total arable land under cultivation from current 34 million hectares in partnership with state governments. 7, recapitalize and restructure the Bank of Industry with a view to bringing in private sector players. 8, prioritize development of critical rural infrastructure such as roads, using sukuk bonds, reactivation centers, and off-grid energy solutions via green bonds as part of measures to reduce post-harvest losses. 9, strengthen agricultural research institutions and universities with appropriate frameworks developed for the commercialization of their research findings and produce. 10, improve insecurity across Nigeria's agricultural investment through a national legislation for community policing and security that empowers farming clusters and associations to ensure security in their communities. 11, provide smallholder farmers with access to credit, input, modern farming techniques, and extension services to increase their productivity and yields. 12, encourage the adoption of mechanized farming techniques and technologies to improve efficiency and productivity in agriculture. 13, strengthen extension services to provide farmers with training, information, and technical support on modern practices, pest management, etc. In conclusion, the Persistent trend and the fall of the Naira underscore the urgency for proactive measures. The findings from the session illuminate the multifaceted factors contributing to the current challenges. As this report indicates, a collaborative effort between the executive and the legislature and between the fiscal and monetary authorities is imperative to mitigate these risks associated with the potential hyperinflation and the continued depreciation of the Naira. We are convinced that the implementation of the recommendations contained in this report will go a long way in bringing down inflation, strengthening the Naira, and stabilizing the economy. Indeed, the gravity of the situation demands collective commitment to implementing these recommendations and forging a path towards economic stability. Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to leave the floor open for anyone that wants to make comment. The former President of the Senate.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Ahmed Lawan. I represent Yobe North Senatorial District. Mr. President, let me commend the Joint Committee for a very well-done job. This is a very exhaustive and comprehensive job. Mr. President, I want to also say that this report should go beyond the usual passage that we will do here. This report, after the adoption by the Senate, should be implemented. And I'm using the word implementation very purposefully, Mr. President. Mr. President, if you look at page 12, distinguished colleagues, 12D particularly, where the committee talks of rapid social safety net interventions, providing interventions in the area of food and transportation to alleviate the suffering of vulnerable Nigerians and mitigate the impact of economic challenges. Today, this is our life, and almost everyone is affected in one way or the other. So, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I want us to look at the recommendations in the perspectives of those that need immediate implementation, those that will be medium term, and those that will be long term. The immediate are critical because we need to survive first to go to the medium and the long terms. Mr. President, our relevant committees, for example, on this, food and transportation, particularly food, our relevant committee, and here will be the Committee on Agriculture, I don't know which of the two, and probably our Committee on Economic Planning, should be able to sit down with relevant agencies of government on how they intend to provide the food that Mr. President had set up a committee to provide for our citizens. Mr. President, it is important that we keep tabs on this particular item, because from what we see around and what we feel, what we hear, things are not so good for citizens. And the executive side is trying to do something. But if you look at the debate, Mr. President, many will tell you that even what we think we have in the silos in stock may not be up to that figure. And that means that we have to look for much of the food that we need for our people elsewhere. Whether we go to the market and buy, or whatever it is that we need to do, Mr. President, we must provide food for Nigerians at this point. And then we continue the implementation of those that will be in the medium and long terms. But Mr. President, this committee has done a very, very good job. Thank you very much.
Well, I think what Senator Amelon said is germane, is very important, because the president directed that food should be made available to those in need from our strategic grain reserves. And I think it's very important. Well, that is very commendable. It's commendable. We commend Mr. President for doing that. What is important here is that the relevant committees of the Senate should follow up and make sure that everything is done properly. Moving to show that the food is released as the grains are released as directed by Mr. President, and follow up on all aspects of the exercise is very, very important. It's a call to all our relevant committees. Please do that and liaise with the leadership to give update in respect to that exercise. Senator Jibril Issa.
Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, very distinguished colleagues, I am Issa Jibrin, representing Kogi East. Your Excellency, first I want to commend members of these three committees. I was also there throughout the interface with those government, with the ministers and other government functionaries who were present that day. I was there and I listened attentively. I also made my contribution that day. So I want to commend all of us who were there that day at that interface. Having said that, Mr. President, I want to say that a lot of damage has been done in the economy. This damage arose from the inability of...
Sorry, and I think in addition to what Senator Amelon said, and in addition to what Mr. President did, it's important that the state governments will also follow suit. They should also go out there and procure grains and distribute to those in need. This crisis or the problem we are facing the solution does not rest on the shoulder of the federal government alone. All the subsidy has been removed and the state governments are making more money. Yes, some state governments are doing well, trying to get across to those in need. Others should also do the same. Not only the state government, even local governments. Their grants, their allocations from the federation account has increased. They should also go out there, procure grains and distribute. What we have at hand is not the sole responsibility of the federal government to solve. The entire system must come together, must collaborate to make sure we do the needful. So state governments should come out and do the needful. You have gotten more revenue from the removal of oil subsidy, bring out money and assist. Local government also do the same. In fact, we are very happy because some centers here and members are also doing the same. They are distributing grains and that is commendable. So please state government and local government should please come out and emulate the federal government. Continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Like I said, a lot of damage has been done to the economy. And this arose from the inability of the previous governments to take some actions, okay? To take some actions or take some decisions. As it is today, the decisions that have been taken recently by the federal government, if properly implemented, will set Nigeria on a sustainable path for growth. Having said that, the implementation is very key of the recommendations made by this committee. The implementation is very, very important. I want to employ all the relevant government agencies, ministries and agencies, to put their hands together ensure that the recommendations are distributed to these ministries for effective follow-up. Okay, and at the end of the day, there should be periodic report to the Senate on the extent to which these recommendations have been implemented. I want to recommend too that the federal government should set up an implementation team. Okay, that implementation team should report to the Senate or to the National Assembly periodically on their efforts as far as implementation of these recommendations are concerned. Otherwise, it will be a wasteful exercise.
Senator Babangida Hussaini.
Thank you very much, President of the Senate, sitting at the chair, distinguished colleagues. Senator Babangida Hussaini, representing Jigawa Northwest. Mr. President, I'd like to speak to the effort of the executive in providing immediate relief for food from the strategic grains reserve silos. This is commendable and this is quite appreciated. However, the problem is multidimensional and it requires a multidimensional approach. Now I'd like to speak to recommendation 2 on page 13 and recommendation 11 on the same page. Both of them are talking about the issues of land tenure system and also the issue of accessibility to credit by small farmer holders. Sir, distinguished colleagues, we all know the difficulty in raising title for land. Raising title for land is very critical to getting the required security to access facility from banks. And this is one of the major problems why most farmers from our part of the country, especially from my zone, were unable to leverage on the credit schemes that are available with the banks. And I think I'd like to go to a very popular book, which I recommend we take time to look at it. And the title of the book is Why Capitalism Works Well in the West and Fails Everywhere Else by Hernando Soto. That book is talking about the inability of businesses to flourish in the third world because of our inability to raise capital. And you cannot raise capital without land title. And you cannot access credit without title. So therefore, I think the two recommendations speak to the same matter. So my recommendation or additional recommendation is that state government should be encouraged to fast track and simplify the process of land titling so that farmers can be able to access credits from banks and programs of government. Thank you, sir.
Senator Abdul Ningi, then Senator Ume, then we come to this side, Senator Mongono.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central, Bauchi State. Mr. President, let me commend the presenter of this report for a very thorough professional exercise. And it is my view, this report should not just be a typical lay report before the Parliament. This, in my view, should be sent to the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces for onward transmission to the Federal Executive Council, because this will enrich their capacity, their insight, their overview. I believe the Joint Committees have done a very good job, a very thorough job, and a very commendable job. But Mr. President, in view of the hula valoo about incessant, continuous castigation of the last regime of President Buhari in the last 8 years, I also concur to the castigation. But Mr. President, the fact of the matter, sir, if you peruse through the Constitution, Section 80, 88, 89, 134, and so on and so forth, these sections so named gave the National Assembly the powers of oversight. And therefore, when you hear people saying the regime did not do well, the question comes back to the National Assembly. How far has the National Assembly also done its oversight? The National Assembly could have done better, but are we able, do we have the capacity to be able to do this job? You and me, Mr. President, knows in the last 20 years while we're here, there are areas that we do not have the capacity to oversight. And probably over the years, because of fear of castigation by the general public, we have not been able to enhance our ability, our powers to peruse the executive in terms of implementation of this budget. Example, sir, when we have issues that has to do with overseas, from America to London to Japan, what monies do you have to be able to follow it up, implement it? What capacity do you have to raise questions and probably come up with answers that is needed to this country? Going forward, I think the National Assembly must remain steadfast, create capacity for itself, and therefore, when things like this arose, some of these things arose out of our inability to do the needful, out of some expectation that has not been met, is because sometimes the party position. We take party positions regardless of the national issue. We take ethnic position regardless of the national issue. We take regional stand regardless of the importance of the national issue. So some of these things culminated to where we are. Finally, sir, I think it is important to take the first paragraph of the conclusion. And what does the first paragraph say? In conclusion, the persistent inflationary trend and the fall of the Naira underscores the urgency for proactive measures. There is no substitute to this. The more the Naira falls, the more suffering comes on board. And therefore, until we try as much as possible to think out of the box in making sure that this downtrend of the Naira is halted before the end of this month, before the end of this year, there will be a lot of sufferings. And we are here in making sure that people don't suffer. Mr. President, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. Victor, we have 2 minutes, then Senator Mara Mongono will take over.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Victor Ume. I represent Anambra Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, this report from the Joint Committee of the Senate has traversed most of the issues on hand today. Starting from their findings and their recommendations, it is still a rehash of the challenges we have seen in the economy. I think what will concern us will be how to get out of these problems. And from the monetary and fiscal measures, which they highlighted in 4.1, says the government should prioritize liquidating the 30 trillion ways and means obligation of the federal government through a quicker resolution mechanism than the current securitization arrangement over a period of 40 years. Over a period of 40 years. So this quicker resolution, which the committee alluded to, is vague. What do they want us to do? These obligations that we have agreed is putting so much burden on Nigeria, 30 trillion ways and means. If we see it as
the thing holding us on the jugular, what are those quicker resolution mechanisms? Do we repudiate some of these obligations? Will the country continue to carry this burden that is hoisted on the country through questionable means in the past? We must be bold to investigate those things and see how we can cut down this obligation. If we continue to carry these obligations on the nation, we will not be able to go anywhere. Secondly, Mr. President, the foreign exchange management policy, which they have recommended here, I think, on my own part, that the major problem is supply of foreign exchange. The measures I saw here are all measures that are medium-term and long-term. There is no short-term that is effective. This morning, somebody saw me around the bank and told me that he's ready to buy dollar 1,780 naira. 1,780 naira. I looked at him. I said 1,780. He said if I have now, he will pay in the bank. This measure that we are talking about will be a measure that will arrest this continuous increase. Boosting oil production. We know that when you boost oil production, you earn additional revenue in foreign exchange. It will help. But when will that happen? Look at what happened there yesterday. The EFCC raided the Bureau de Changes at Zone 4 in Abuja here. That is a sign of somebody who is acting out of desperation. There's no fiscal policy anymore to rein in these things from the office, because the CBN ought to put in measures that will immediately have spillover effect on the market. So I think, Mr. President, that government must give a clear direction on how to stem this tide.
Thank you, thank you.
The state governments are getting
1 second remaining.
away. I've also read that the pressure on our Naira is from the money they are sharing. They come to chase the little dollar available with the monies they take away instead of using the money to fight.
Who does that? Who does that? Your mic.
To say that. I posted it to the Senate platform where they say that anytime after FAC, once money is distributed, 2 days after that, the value of the dollar, the Naira will depreciate more because people will be ready to pay more money to buy dollar. Every 2 days after FAC, I posted it. Somebody has done this analysis, given dates of FAC and the value of the dollar 2 days after FAC or 3 days after FAC. So by that means we should know who is using that money to chase the dollars. So I think that government should also be very helpful. If the CBN.
Thank you, but your time is up. Thank you. 2 minutes. We gave you 3 minutes. Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Senator Mohamed Babagana Mongono, you have the floor.
Not Babagana. Distinguished President of the Senate, distinguished senators, my name is Mohamed Tahir Mongono. I represent Marte Mongono Ngenzei. My attention is drawn to recommendation 4.2 of the committee report, which centers on agriculture, starting from page 12 to page 13. Very beautiful recommendations, which are very apt and germane towards revamping the agricultural sector. But all these recommendations are a function of adequate funding of the sector. It may interest you to know, distinguished senators and Mr. President, that African countries, on their own volition, subscribe to the Maputo Declaration that urges all African countries to devote at least 10% of their budget to the agricultural sector, in view of the fact that agriculture accounts for 70% of our employment in Africa. It accounts to about 30% of our GDP, and also for the purpose of achieving food security. African countries on their own suo motu agreed that 10% should be devoted to the agricultural sector, which is termed the Maputo Declaration. But it may interest this distinguished Senate to note that since that declaration, the highest we attained is during the presidency of the late President Shehu Musa Yar'Adua of blessed memory, when we are able to attain about 2% of our budget being devoted to agriculture. I have done my own statistics. This year's budget, we have less than 2% that is devoted to the agricultural sector. So, Mr. President, distinguished senators, if you want to achieve the gospel of diversification of our economy away from oil to agriculture, and also achieve the much needed food security, then we have to walk the talk by deploying the much needed resources to the agricultural sector. We cannot afford to relegate the agricultural sector to the background. We must give it all the wherewithal for it to be able to leapfrog in order to for the country to achieve food diversification of the economy as well as food security. That is my own observation on this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition, Mr. Chairman, you did a wonderful job. You even advocate for, improved security across Nigerian agricultural investments through a national legislation for community policing and security that empowers farming clusters and associations to ensure security in their communities. Well, there's a need to place more emphasis on the farming locations in Zamfara State, Niger State, Kaduna State, and Kebbi State, and in fact, and Benue State. These are areas that are described as the food basket of this country. Now, farmers they can't go to farm in most of these locations. Our men and women in uniform, the security agents are doing wonderful jobs in trying to secure these areas. Let them do more. We call on them to do more. So that the more we secure these areas, the more food will be produced next year. And it will bring down these challenges we're having. So I think it's good. We'll be talking to our security agencies, and we urge them to do more. They are doing well. We are proud of them. They are doing very well. They are putting their lives on the line for us to be secure. We are proud of them. But please, we urge them to do more. Senator Adams Oshomole. Sorry.
Let me join those who have spoken to appreciate the comprehensive report as presented to us this morning. I have read through it. I think it does make a serious attempt to look at all the issues in a holistic manner. So I commend the leadership and members of the committee. However, I've taken time to read some of this on the spot, and I will suggest, Mr. President, that next time reports as important as this, it will be helpful if we have copies in advance, and we have time to read them, digest them, and note what we need to note, and where we have alternative views to be able to canvass them. But for today, Mr. President, I want to invite your attention to page 9. And I will read, if you allow me, I think the second paragraph on page 9. No, the second paragraph, other foreign exchange management. Yeah, Mr. President, I think these gentlemen is arresting you. The man who ride on the horse, be careful. It says other foreign exchange management. The Nigeria foreign exchange management is experiencing increased demand pressures, causing a continuous decline in the value of the Naira. Factors contributing to this situation include speculative foreign exchange demand and inadequate foreign exchange supply. To address this exchange rate volatility, a comprehensive strategy has been initiated to enhance liquidity in the forex market. This includes unifying FX market segment, clearing outstanding FX obligations, introducing new operating guidelines for BDCs and international monetary transfer operating.
Senator Shimole, 1 second. Please, let me draw the attention of distinguished senators to Order 55-9. It reads, when a senator is speaking, no senator may converse aloud or make any noise or disturbance to interrupt him. Please, let's listen to Senator Oshomole in silence, please. Please, this is a very, very important report we are discussing right now. We have challenges in our country, and this joint committee worked very hard to produce a report. These challenges are what we need to surmount, and everything is contained in this report. And this report is now being debated. Please, can we listen? Let's contribute. Let's give our attention to this. We have nothing more important than what we are discussing now in this country. We are facing challenges, and these committees have done a wonderful job. They sat day and night to produce a report, all encompassing, everything contained in it. So please, let's listen. Let's debate this report for the benefit of our nation, for the interest of our country. Please. Oshomole has the floor. Continue.
I just want to read this part. I think I've read it, but I'm a bit uncomfortable with the recommendations. Having read the first paragraph, the concluding part of that paragraph says, these measures aim at a more market-oriented mechanism for exchange rate determination. We boost foreign exchange inflows, stabilize the exchange rate, and minimize its pass-through to domestic inflation. With profound respect, I beg to disagree. The market, over the past 6 months, even between when we prepared the budget and today, the market has destroyed the Naira. And talking about EFCC going to arrest some bureau de change operators, we are actually practically operating a system now in which it is those who are completely uninformed about monetary policies that buy and sell exchange rate under the tree that seems to be determining the real exchange rate. What the bank refers to as market means try to balance supply with demand. This is the policy that has crashed the Naira. I asked the question when it concluded this paragraph with a particular sentence. how far these measures.
Sir, you have 1 minute remaining. 1 minute remaining.
Do we moderate the demand for forests? The market will not moderate itself. The state has to moderate that demand by identifying some non-essential items that can easily be produced here and prohibit those items from being imported. We have to be specific. We will try to reduce demand. How?
1 second remaining. 1 second.
No. The government has to intervene and return a number of items to the prohibition list. And if they are found anywhere, they should be destroyed to punish those who insist on economic sabotage, putting personal profit motive over and above national interest.
Thank you very much. Time is up. Thank you.
This issue of high cost of living is real. All of us here operate from the market, whether you go directly or you say your relative or your stewards. My problem, sir, is that the agreements already reached between the federal government and Labour with regards to the 35,000 Naira increase in salaries. I was told as of yesterday it was only paid twice. What is happening to the additional Naira that is accruing to the Federation account? And I also believe that those monies accruing to the Federation account in Naira terms, which has more than double or quadruple, is enough for the Mr. President and the federal government to direct the states. If the NSC is not able to compare the states, federal government should interface with the state governments and direct them to implement the 35,000 Naira increase across the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Effectively, is that when prices are going up worldwide, there is one solution. You increase the purchasing power of the victims. You don't lament it. So I put to the Senate that, my colleague, with due respect, if you are going to put food on the table for a cripple, you have to raise the hand of the cripple to be able to catch the food. Increase the salary that have been agreed, which will make a 30 minimum wage 65,000, pending negotiation for a more realistic minimum wage. We don't need to share tears. We need specific policies that will address this matter. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Munir Nwoko. Then thereafter we move to SARS. Then of course Senator Odindi.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. My name is Naira Nwoko. I represent the good people of Delta North, Delta State. Mr. President, I am indeed part of the committee that hosted.
Senator Munir, were you are a member of the committee? So what was the point? If I remember, then allow those who are not members to contribute to you know, I mean, let's be realistic. You forgot something to give to the committee when you were. Okay, we give you 1 minute. 1 minute to add to that. 1 minute.
What I said at the committee hearing was not reflected here, and I do take exception to that. The first thing is that I lamented the fundamental problem we have in Nigeria, and that is the use of dual currencies in Nigeria. There is no other economy that can survive with that. We must understand that we have relegated Naira to the background. Everybody is talking about dollars, and dollar is what is causing the problems. We must, Mr. President, it might be a difficult thing to contemplate, but it has to be done. What has to be done is that we have to stop the use of dollars in Nigeria. Once you do that, Mr. President, everything will begin to take shape. And let me tell you what has happened. In Nigeria, we must make it compulsory for the use of Naira by anybody in Nigeria. So if even the sale of oil, the sale of crude oil must be done in Naira. Anybody who is coming to Nigeria as a tourist must come here with Naira. Yes. By the time you make it compulsory for people to come into Nigeria with Naira, the need for Naira, the demand for Naira will become prevalent in those countries. So they will go to the banks to buy Naira to come to Nigeria. That is the only way you can.
Thank you for that patriotic suggestion.
Mr. President, that's not all. Please allow me some time to speak. The second point, Mr. President, is on the issue of interest.
Senator Abiru, he was member of your committee. Didn't he bring all this forward during the committee meeting? No problem. Well, just 1 minute. One more minute for you.
Please, Mr. President. 2 minutes. The second issue is this, Mr. President. You cannot, and in an economy of this nature, we must think of consumers. The interest rate in Nigeria currently is unacceptable. We must think of an interest rate that is no more than 5%, so that people can begin to borrow. If people cannot borrow, they cannot survive. We're just kidding ourselves talking about all these recommendations. So we must be able to, we should be able to borrow at an affordable interest rate. And then, Mr. President.
Thank you. Time is off. Thank you.
Insecurity is everywhere. I come from Delta North. Delta State is not, I know you've emphasized on Zamfara and other states. In every forest and every farm in Delta, there are herdsmen. There are herdsmen everywhere, terrorizing and killing our farmers. They cannot farm. Our farmers cannot farm. We can, Mr. President, we are farmers. We are farmers in Delta. Yes, we have oil. The oil has not done us a lot of good because most of the environments are degraded because of pollution. The farming area that are not degraded cannot be farmed because of problems with from herdsmen. So we need security. Our farmers need security to be able to farm. And we have to ask state governors to make an effort in this regard. I agree with you. Everything cannot be left to the federal government. The states must also form and fund vigilantes in every community. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Salisu Afolabi Shuaib. SAS.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is Shuaib Afolabi Salisu. I represent Ogun Central. In order to put my comment in perspective, and I won't take more than 2 minutes, Mr. President. On page 12 of this report, this very beautiful report, it says in one day, FMDQ on Monday, January 29, the rate of Naira to a dollar was moved from 8.91 in one day to $1 to 1,348 Naira 63 kobo. On page 12 of this report. That was on the 29th of January. The event that was being reported here was held on the 9th of February, 11 days ago. The rate of Naira to dollar was about 1,500 or thereabout. Yesterday, the 19th of February, somebody came to my office and said the rate is 1,740. Just a while ago, as we speak now, the rate of Naira to dollar is 1,810. Before we conclude this debate today, the rate of Naira may have moved to 1,900. What does this suggest? we're in a state of emergency when it comes to management of our economy. Something must be wrong. We might have had good intentions, we may have good policies, but if Naira moves on the 29th of January from 891 to 1,300, and on the 9th of February when the committee met with the management of the economy and it was 1,500, yesterday 1,700, as I speak 1,800, then we need something different to come. My suggestion is that this Senate, if the only thing we preoccupied our mind with now are the two issues of security and the hunger in land, we will have discharged our responsibilities. I therefore want to suggest that this Senate should constitute an ad hoc committee of experienced senators that will cut across two things: the geopolitical zones, to be sure that every geopolitical zone is represented, and the relevant committees of the Senate. They should have the power to invite and consult with those who know about the management of economy outside the executive. We need to get alternative views, alternative opinions. We need to get input aside from those who are in government on how to manage this economy. Otherwise, before we resume, or tomorrow on Tuesday, the rate might have gone to 1,900 or 2,000. Something is certainly wrong, and until we come to terms with that reality and this Senate take the front seat in the management of the economy, we will not be able to, we won't have been able to discharge our...
1 second remaining. Thank you, Senator Odende. Then Senator Sampson will follow.
Thank you, Mr. President, my dear colleagues. I must commend the committee for doing a good job, particularly as a...
But I hope you are not a member. Are you a member of the committee? So that you don't commend yourself.
Regards recommendations on page 12, particularly paragraph 10, as regards security of farmers. So if measures are not taken immediately, in my senatorial district, there will be problem next year. It will be worse. Because now, page 13, paragraph 10, security of farmers. If nothing is done now, there will be a very big problem next year. It will be worse. There will be no food. Because about 6 local governments are being taken over by bandits. Kwande local government, Kastala local government, Ukum local government, and Logo local government. These people are destroying farms. These people are destroying farms and farm produce and taking over and sending farmers away. So if government does nothing, by next year, there will be no food and it will be worse. I urge that this recommendation be taken very seriously and it be implemented immediately. Thank you, Mr. President.
This is Senator Constantin.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. I was not a member of the committee, so I thought of giving some more time to contribute. This report mirrors the state of the nation. I came worried, like every other of my colleagues, this afternoon. This report mirrors the state of the nation. A lot has been said, a lot has been canvassed, but I think what we must understand as an institution is that a poor economy puts pressure on democracy. I think that's the first issue that we need to address as a Senate. A weak economy, a poor economy that we are having, so that we're having now, puts pressure on democracy. There's concern in the streets, there's concern everywhere. But I think as a contributor, this, where we are now, raises issues about our adherence to the principles of economic sovereignty. We are faced with challenges of production, challenges of insecurity. If our space is not secure, how do we produce? The pressure on the Naira has thrown up a lot of questions. We have seen a lot of interest being put in the dollar. This report has raised issue of implementation. But I think we would have had a head start if we analyze our adherence to the principles of economic sovereignty. Why are we so dependent on the dollar? Why have we left the issues of production? Which economy firms up when there is no production? Which economy firms up when there is so much insecurity? It is said that a hungry man is an angry man. Those on the streets who are angry have no time now for bills. They are complaining of hunger. And that brings up to the issue of agriculture. Mr. President, I am a farmer, and I trust many of us here are farmers. If we don't produce, if we don't look for sustainable means to ramp up production, we will remain in dire straits. And that brings up to the issue of all hands being on deck. The local government councils, state governments, and of course, the center. We must all come about to look at this major crisis that stares us in the face and is putting pressure on our land. I have been very insistent, Mr. President, that for us to properly address the issues of insecurity in this country, we must involve our rural space, the local government councils. Mr. President, you were with us in Uyo, and you did very well as a governor. Before you were elected a governor, you did very well.
No, take that again, please.
He was a commissioner in my state, and I was privileged to work under him as chairman of council. He brought measures where we could drive the rural space towards agriculture. We made sure our space was secure. But when your space is secure, you can't produce. In fact, the beginning of Uncommon began when the President of the Senate served as our commissioner. So the time has come for us to properly strengthen our local government administration. A local government chairman knows who the bandits are and where the bandits live. A local government chairman knows where the big boys live. We go around looking for solutions when we have it right in our hip pocket. Let us empower our local government administration and see whether we will not have a breakthrough in our security challenges. The more we neglect our rural space, the more insecurity stares us in the face. So the major thrust of my contribution today is that we have to return to the basics of our economic sovereignty. It's very, very key. If we address the underpinnings of economic sovereignty, we will have realized that we have found a way around the dollar. The dollar in Nigeria has become like a big masquerade, over-celebrated. Why should we be doing that at the turn of this century? Let us look inwards. Let us see how we can ramp up production. I was very interested in a limb of this recommendation on transparency. The more we are transparent, the more we have the buy-in from the public. This is not time for blame games. We've done blame games enough. This is time for us to look at the solutions, because truly a weak economy put pressure on democracy. Let us look at the fundamentals of economic sovereignty and see how we can pull back this country from the brink. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Warada.
Very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I am Senator Ahmed Wadada Aliyu Sarkinyakin Kefi, representing Nasarawa State, Nasarawa West Senatorial District of Nasarawa State, and I rode a horse to get to the Senate. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this report is all-encompassing, but of course, even if one is a member of the committee, from the time of the compilation of the report to now, dynamism of life could make you have something different to say. Let me start with fiscal and monetary policy or policies. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is an open secret that when fiscal policy is expansionary, then monetary policy should be contractionary. This is to say that when fiscal policy is loose, is high, then monetary policy should be low, so that the lower rate of the monetary policy will augment the expansionary nature of fiscal policy. That is, if taxes are, in a nutshell, if taxes are high, then interest rates should be low, so that what the citizenry loses, or what the citizens lose as a result.
That is what are the economics? Which economic thesis did you get that word?
Because when you pay high taxes, then interest rate in banks, foreign exchange should go low. So what you lose there, you will gain here to augment what you are losing as a result of fiscal policy. So a situation where these two are at par, then it puts the economy under intense pressure. Secondly, Mr. President, on food security, of course, I commend the position of the federal government under President Tinubu that federal government will not import food into the country, which is okay. But I have this to say. For the private sector players.
No, I don't, please. Let's not misunderstand that. What I understood is that the federal government will do everything possible to put food on the table of Nigerians. This is an emergency. So if you say that the policy is don't import food, no. No, we are, I believe at the moment now, we are at the threshold where nothing should be ruled out, because Nigerians want food. The hungry population is an angry population. And so we must do everything possible to put food on the table of Nigerians. I recognize the need for us to protect local production, but at the moment we are under an emergency. And under an emergency situation, no policy should be ruled out. We must keep everything open to make sure that Nigerians are fed, to reduce the food prices. You need to understand that as of now, we have not yet even arrived at what should be the minimum wage. So you can have a situation where a bag of rice is twice the minimum wage, and then the production that we would have done as a result of insecurity and inability to access the farms. People are not bringing out food because of, and then you say you cannot provide food. There's no policy that says you cannot import food in the interim. I'm saying that you said you applaud the policy that they should not import food. I'm saying no. I rather applaud the policy that federal government will provide food, that food will be made available to all households at affordable prices, and that food will be taken as an emergency. That should be a better way of putting it. I don't want us to misquote the federal government, because they are still having discussions on how to make sure that in the nearest, in the immediate, all Nigerians have access to food, and that the hunger is reduced to the barest minimum, and that the people can afford it also.
Mr. President, I think we are saying the same thing in two different ways. It's because you did not listen to me to the end. If government is to import directly, it is going to add to our, the problems of balance of payment, which again will add much more pressure to the Naira against the dollar. So the private sector players that are into agro-allied businesses should be allowed to import.
Okay, then, Senator Warada, I think there is a point of order by the leader. So just give the leader a few seconds.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, I come under Order 8/3 to move for an extension of time to enable us conclude on what we have on our order paper for today. I so move, Mr. President.
The minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I second the motion that moved by the Senate leader that we extend the time beyond 2 o'clock, sit beyond 2 o'clock to enable us conclude all the items on the order paper. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, by way of information, the European Union will be paying a courtesy call on the Senate President and distinguished senators by 2:30 today. So a motion has been moved and seconded that we do extend the time beyond 2 o'clock, by bearing in mind the 2:30 appointment with the European Union. Those who are in support of this motion with the caveat say aye, and those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Wadada, conclude.
Very much, Mr. President. So that's that on food security. Because whatever, like you said, Mr. President, no matter what we do, if we are not able to put food on the table of Nigerians, then the whole essence of leadership that we are all part of at different and various levels will be defeated. So I recommend that private sector players that are into agro-allied businesses should be allowed to import food items to a certain period so as to be able to balance. And I appeal to Nigerians. I appeal to Nigerians in the name of God that created all of us and gave us the different various privileges he's given us. Those of us that are hoarding food items should please bring them out for the sake of humanity. Because the Lord says, for whoever adds value to humanity adds to him. That is just for you to understand the magnitude of reward that comes along with adding value to humanity. Otherwise, what value would you add to God? So please, this is a special appeal for the sake of God. Then for CBN, sir, CBN should honor transactions that are being committed to. Transactions that are legitimate, transactions that are genuine and are of value addition. CBN should honor those transactions, because there are transactions that have already been done but yet to be honored by Central Bank of Nigeria. On the foreign exchange, when I saw the video of what happened yesterday at Zone 4, I laughed and I cried at the same time. I laughed because in 21st century, a great country like Nigeria should not embark on such a thing.
What happened in Zone 4?
that will not solve our foreign exchange problems.
I'm sure you want to come with a separate motion on that. Point of order. Your mic.
Okay, not that one. Amendment to propose the motion. Order 47. Amendment proposed to any motion or bill under consideration in the Senate or a committee thereof shall only be in order if they are relevant to the question or matter then under discussion. Your Excellency, we have a report, and this report has been debated. We have recommendations. It's for the Senate now to look at those recommendations and either agree or disagree.
Point of order sustained. Yes, Senator Wadada, I believe you've concluded.
I don't know what that order that he called, and it does not make any sense to what I, but anyway, bottom line is we should, what needs to be done as to the foreign exchange problem we have been clearly stated in the report. CBN has taken the right directions. It is only for us to ensure that, ensure and support the measures taken, but really and truly going to zone 4 to arrest and attack or harass bureau de change operators.
Point of order was sustained. Thank you for your contributions. The horse rider, distinguished Senator Wadada. Distinguished colleagues, let me give an opportunity to a former governor from a very wealthy state with uranium and a lot of agricultural potentials, distinguished Senator Lalong, to close this debate for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for that compliment. But we are not very wealthy. We are expecting that with more support here, we will be wealthy in my state. Simon Lalong again, representing Plateau South. Mr. President, distinguished senators, to me, I will say I stand with a heavy heart today because of the surrounding events that are happening in the country. Some of us are those who traverse from the executive and run to also this place. I agree entirely with the conclusions of the committee on this issue, and also agree with some of the proposals that we are in an emergency situation. Emergency situation is like you see a house being burned by fire. And the principle is that if fire is there, you don't decide which kind of water to quench the fire. Both the dirty and the good water will be used. You will first quench that fire before you move on to deciding whether it is good or bad water. Number two, the fact that hunger, I agree, does not know tribe. Hunger does not know religion. When there is hunger, the entire thing is about anger. And in that kind of situation, when you get to a stage, it's difficult to contain. That is why some of the principles, because I moved from labor to this place, if some of the agreements are signed were implemented within time, we will not get to this place. I know the content of those agreements with the labor. If those agreements were discussed or were implemented timely, will not get to this stage. Because most of the things that we are seeing today were all some of the things that Mr. President envisaged. And he said, as soon as we continue with implementation, it will reduce the pressure on the economy. Yes, people can now talk about interpretation. People can talk about economy in different perspectives, both the academic and the non-academic. I always believe that in situations like this, let us embark on practical approach. For me, the practical approach is that let us not be seen to be treating this matter with levity. The executive, federal executive is doing their best. But with this kind of motion, I think that there must be state of emergency, like somebody said. But my own concept of state of emergency should be that why can't we quickly convene a stakeholders meeting about this, recommend a stakeholders meeting to discuss the practical aspect. Because some of these practical aspects in addressing this issue will go beyond what we see as economic synthesis, and of course my good friend Wadada will also bring. But we're talking about practical realities, the local approach. In that kind of stakeholders approach, the common man, the worker, the ordinary man will be able to see that kind of solution. And until we address this kind of solution, we will not go back to issue of monetary policy. That is when we now have time to talk about monetary policy. Because part of it is, we are talking of agriculture, like my friend from, my colleague from Benue said. If we are talking of agriculture, you move to Niger, there are large portions of land that federal government, yes, land belongs, the custody of land is in the hands of the state. But the federal government can make an approach and take over for public policy certain portions of the land and start production of certain crops if we think that can be of help. Security is all they need to deploy to that place. If you go to Plateau, for instance, everybody knows that there is no state that produces potatoes like Plateau. Just like Benue produces yams. You can't get potatoes. Potato is very essential. It is not only mere food, but it's also medicinal. Today, we have a very big crisis in part of Plateau. That is the area that produces potatoes and serves Nigeria. If we really want to make an emergency, part of the security is that I saw that they say they want to establish a barracks. When will they start building a barracks that will address that kind of situation? Is more deployment to allow and escort the farmers back to their farms, they are farming and they're coming back. Otherwise, Mr. President, I know that you would like to eat potato. You are not going to get imported potato. By the end of next year, if there is no potato from Mango and Bokos, you will not see potato in Nigeria again. No, situations like this will require serious situations. I wasn't, yes, I am part of those that just saw the motion for the first time. Yes, but the deliberations, like I said, brought out by seasoned experts. The Senator Abiru is a good banker. And they brought out this within a short time. So within a short time, let us look for short measures quickly so that the man outside will know that something good is being done. Even if it's not good enough, he will know that it is an uncommon approach from an uncommon president of the Senate by uncommon senators to survive and also to rescue Nigeria from this predicament. I so move.
Okay. Let me second the speaker, the civil senator Lalong. We have to have an uncommon approach to tackle this uncommon situation. So I agree with you. Are you true? Okay, thank you. Please sit down. Distinguished colleagues, I will start by commending the Committee on Finance, National Planning, Agriculture, Appropriation, and all the committees involved, banking and other financial institutions, for the fantastic job that they've done for the Senate. I'm sure a lot of Nigerians were not even aware that the Senate had taken proactive steps by setting up this kind of joint committee to meet with the economic management team of the federal government to discuss ways and means of tackling the current economic situation, and particularly ensuring food security and making sure, and also ameliorating and reducing the sufferings that Nigerians are currently going through. So I'm excited with the report. We'll look at the recommendations, and where they are not far-reaching enough, we can add additional recommendations. But most importantly, will be for the various committees to ensure monitoring and oversight that what has been agreed upon, each and every item agreed upon is implemented. And over and above that, things have moved since you last met on the 9th of February. So it's important that you know that you still have to meet again. The situation is evolving on a daily basis. You can see a lot of sponsored protests here and there, but those people are not aware. Most of those sponsored protests are not aware of the kind of efforts being made by this Senate to tackle the situation, together with the joint management team of the federal government of Nigeria. There is no father that wants to see his child sleep in the night without food, with a stomach rumbling. So we must provide. That's why I said we must not limit our discussion to, we will not import food, we will not do this. Wherever we can find food to put on the table of Nigerians, we shall do so. It's an emergency situation. Like the Senator Lalong pointed out, it's an uncommon situation, which has been exacerbated by many factors, from COVID-19 to insecurity, to the inflation, to even what Senator Abiru pointed out, the ways and means of 30 trillion, so that put so much pressure on the Central Bank of Nigeria and left a very big gap in the financial situation, so that if this government that inherited the situation tries to fill the gap, it means people will not eat, salaries will not be paid, nothing will be done until the gap is filled. We have taken it, and we must move on. We must move on. We must move on. So let us look at the recommendations and see whether they are far-reaching enough. If they are not, the Deputy Senate President, you are presiding. Have you even said a word on this? And then please say something.
Thank you, Mr. President. Barrow Jibrin Kano North. Mr. President, as you commended the committee, I also want to join you to commend them for a job well done. They've done everything humanly possible in putting together the reports, all encompassing. Let me say that what is happening currently in Nigeria is not something that is happening in isolation. It's not only Nigeria that's facing this kind of economic challenge.
Please repeat that, because and use your campaign voice.
I said it's not something that is happening in isolation to Nigeria. It's something that has international dimension. The world economy is not in its best shape as we speak. As we speak, the United Kingdom, the economy of the United Kingdom is in recession. They are in recession as we speak. The price of goods, commodities, everywhere in the world has risen. Everywhere. In the US, name it, anywhere, everywhere. So it's not peculiar to Nigeria. The Russian-Ukraine war, the Middle East crisis has created a situation where prices of goods and commodities all over the world has gone up. So what is left for us here
is to look at our own problem and try to surmount these problems. And that is exactly what we are doing. Let's anybody not. We should stop thinking that it's only Nigeria. No, 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 no. Yes, we are facing challenges occasioned by what is happening internationally. So now we have to look at these problems. How do we do that? How do we deal with these problems? And this is exactly what we are doing. Yes, we have pockets of problem. Of course, our security situation is not how we want it to be. We understand the CEC is doing very well in collaboration with Service Chief and other security agencies. They are doing their best. For instance, if you look at what is happening in the Northwest, now the situation is a little bit reducing. Before, you could not travel between here and Kaduna. There's no way. There was no way you could travel between here and Kaduna. But now, you can even travel in the night between here and Kaduna, between Abuja and Kaduna. And I was speaking with Senator Lamido. Senator Tambol is here. Senator Lamido was telling me that they are dealing, in fact, the problem they are facing in their area before now has been reduced. They have chased away most of the baddies around that area. He told me, I'm sure, Senator Tambol here, former governor of Sokoto State. So, the government is doing its best. The president is doing his best. What we need to do is to have everybody coming together, a full collaboration of everyone. I said it when you left this, when you went out, that the state government should come on board. Let's not leave everything on the shoulders of the federal government alone. They should come on board. We did everything here. We're talking about oil subsidy. We remove it. State government are having more money now. They're taking home a lot of money. So let them bring what they are getting to collaborate with the federal government to deal with these problems, but particularly issues of commodities. Buy them and give out to the poor. The president has directed that food should be released from strategic reserves of the federal government. Now, we want the state government to also make the same pronouncement. Let them also come with their own money. Let local government also come along. Here we have seen what the senators are doing. A lot have bought grains and distributed to their constituents. So also members of the House of Representatives, including yourself and myself. I'm distributing about 200,000, to 200,000 households. Let's hear what the state governments will do. Let's hear what the local governments will do. Let's not leave all this problem on the shoulder of the federal government. I so submit, Mr. President. Thank you.
The Deputy Senate President, thank you for your very eloquent elucidation of the situation. And I must say that unverified report has it that each of the state governments in the last few months have received additional 30 billion from the Federal Inland Revenue Service outside their normal allocations, from the Federation account, outside their normal allocations, to assist them in ameliorating the food situation. So we believe that every state government should utilize the funds so received towards ensuring that food is available in the country. So the state governments have a lot to do. They are closest to the people. And I don't want to mention local government because most local governments are controlled by the state governors. So my belief is that if the state governments do what is needful, then the local governments in turn will only be involved in sharing to make sure that these things get to the people. But we must not overlook the fact that Nigerians are not going to be interested in stories. Nigerians want to see action. And that is why I commend the joint committees for the recommendations that they have done, and I commend the senators who are constantly going back home almost every weekend to assist to make sure that you reduce whatever sufferings, but assure the people that this government will do everything possible. That's why I said no policy will be exclusive or excluded. This is an emergency situation. Nigerians want to eat food, and we are going to provide food for them. The government will have no excuse. Despite what we met on ground, COVID-19, used to kill, in Italy alone, up to 4,000 people in a day. Most of them were farmers. They couldn't go back to farm. Ukraine, fighting with Russia. 70% of the world's wheat came from Ukraine. And therefore, those things have stopped. The wheat can no longer come. So you don't expect that not to have impact. And then insecurity in the Northwest with the vast land. And then, of course, what was happening in the North Central. You don't expect that not to have impact when people could not enter their farms. Then, of course, the ways and means and the borrowing of over 30 trillion without necessary earnings by the CBN vis-a-vis the federal government. And then the global economic situation where even United Kingdom has announced recession. So I think people need to be patient with government, but rather look at what we are doing as a Senate and as a National Assembly. We cannot sit back and allow our people to be hungry. And so we must do everything. If what we are producing right now is not sufficient, we can't sit back and say, oh, no importation by the private sector, no importation. If we need to even look at the issue of closure of borders, we should do so, if that will assist us to make sure that food is available. Because even now, with the little you have, tons and tons of food are being taken across the borders every night. Yes, at the moment, the CFA is stronger than the Naira. So people are rushing to go and sell their food products in CFA and not in Naira. So we are going to look at every issue. And that is why I applaud the Senate, I applaud the Joint Committee, and I'm saying if the recommendations are not far enough, we will do so. And thereafter, we'll still have a small committee of leadership to go further and discuss with Mr. President to make sure that everything that we need to do, we do so to make sure that Nigerians are happy. Because they voted for us, they don't want excuses despite the global economic recession. All they want is to see food on their table. And food we shall give to them. Security we must give to them. I also join you to commend the security services for the reduction in crime across the board. And I also mentioned in our closed session the other day, we were happy to hear that almost all of those who caused insecurity in Abuja, including the killers of that young lady they called Nebena, have all been apprehended and are in detention. So a lot of things are getting improved, and we must continue to improve and work on it despite what is happening globally. The war in Gaza is also a problem and all that. And then even the war in Sudan and other areas. And then of course, the insecurity in the nations around us, our neighboring places, and then the climate change and all that. But I commend you for this, and let us go straight into the recommendations and see whether they are far-reaching enough. Thank you for what you have done. (4.1) Arrest inflationary pressure through liquidity surfeit reduction. Even though that may sound difficult for the ordinary person to understand, except Senator Abiru and Senator Sani Musa, the government should prioritize liquidating the 30 trillion ways and means obligations of the federal government through a quicker resolution mechanism than the current securitization arrangement over a period of 40 years. In addition, the CBN should put in place measures to ensure the repayment of various intervention programs by the beneficiaries after a thorough evaluation of their performances. This will help reduce money supply. Also, the quasi-fiscal measures totaling 10 trillion, of which the Anchor Borrower Program is a major part, should be further interrogated by the committee with a view to plugging loopholes in future development finance activities of the bank. Well, this Anchor Borrowers Program was an item that the Senate intended to look into. But if you are using this recommendation to take over the investigation on your own, those in support of the recommendation will say aye. Those again say nay. The ayes have it. That means you are authorized by the Senate to look into the anchor borrowers issue as a joint committee. Foreign exchange management, that is B, 4.1B. Those in support of B say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Any amendment? Distinguished Senator Yaya.
Program. What you require is to interrogate the various intervention programs through which this 30 trillion was accumulated. Now we should not forget that this 30 trillion, part of it was there because in 2015, the regime of President Buhari came and found most states could not even pay salaries. Therefore, a lot of the money that was borrowed from the bank to show up revenues of state government were borrowed through ways and means. And a lot of payments were made to the states to enable them come up. Now, those monies are not monies that were derived from the revenues of the states. They are monies that were obtained as loans from the central bank. Therefore, the states, now that they are swimming in Naira, some arrangement should be paid for the state to pay back those loans. So there is no need for these monies to be in the books of the federal government over a 40-year period. And if you do that, you also reduce the liquidity in the fiscal system by adjusting now the fiscal money that is available into the economy, while you will be using that to strengthen the monetary side and also preserve some resources so that you can push out the value of the Naira. So this part of the revolution is not just anchoring the anchor borrowers. Yes, anchor borrowers is there. But this, we have to cover the fiscal space, by making the state government return the money that they got from the federal government as loans in order to show up their economies. When the price of petroleum in 2014 fell from $100 per barrel to around to around $30 per barrel, in 2015 when the new administration of APC came to power. Therefore, that part of the thing, there are two issues here, under monetary policy. One, to make sure that the states paid off their loans that they got to show up their economies, and the other one is to interrogate this one single big item, the anchor borrowers program and its administration. So there are two issues here, which I think the National Assembly, the Senate needs to consider, so that when we come to do the interventions that are necessary, these issues are taken into account. Thank you, sir.
Where the Senator Ndume?
Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. I rise to support the discussion initiated by the former Senate leader. Mr. President, you have mentioned now, we are in one of the most difficult situations in this country. And the essence, constitutionally, of having a Senate is to provide stability in circumstances like this. We have people that know better than some of these people that are holding forth for the government now. The chairman of the committee is here. He has reached his climax in the banking sector before he came here. He is an experienced, and he was a PAMSEC. You were a former governor twice. We have several individuals here that are talented. Who? Oh, okay. No, but distinguished colleagues, this is serious. Why Senate, even historically, was established is to provide stability, not to be under certain circumstances, try to dress the wound and ask the patient to go. And tomorrow when you open the wound, it's near the bone. Before you know, you have to cut off the leg. And after that, maybe you have to take it up. The situation is cancerous. So the Senate should look at this situation again critically. Unfortunately, the president of this country was a member of the parliament in 1992. And I'm sure he's looking up to these hallowed chambers for solution to some of these problems. So let us not shy away from it. Let us look at these issues holistically and properly. And even if we have to get some people outside, because what it seems now is that people are just wallowing in a problem and they will drown all of us. So I suggest that we look at the issues, and the experts that we have here are even enough, not to talk of if the Senate has the right to get experts outside. We need to do this quickly because you can see our people are running out of patience. And we need to be serious when we come to discussion in this chamber because people are watching us. If we are not looking at this problem seriously, you'll be surprised. God forbid.
Yes. No, not to stop. To give me a chance to explain. Let me say that even your unspoken words are even stronger than the spoken words. The distinguished colleagues, Senator Ndume, is supporting the proposal by Senator Yaya that we look at the recommendation 1 again. That there are issues that seem to be joined together, that ought to be separated. That, for instance, the issue of these 30 trillion ways and means